Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out the range with a German G1 FAL rifle. Did you know that Germany actually tried to adopt the FAL during the Cold War in the 1950s? Well, that kind of fell apart, and we'll talk a little bit about that in today's video. But the G1 is a very beautiful example of the FAL. Now, keep in mind, 90-some nations would ultimately wind up adopting this rifle during the Cold War. It's very iconic, it's very sleek looking, still by today's standards in 2025, very modern looking, and just a beautiful rifle to shoot. So today we're going to do some shooting with the G1. We're going to talk about a little bit about the high-level history of the G1, talk about some of the features of this particular rifle, and just have some fun with it. Absolutely gorgeous piece of history right here, folks. A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below. The G1 has a bit of an interesting history. So keep in mind, after World War II, there was a lot of countries in Europe that simply didn't want to see a rearmed Germany. And so after the Second World War, Germany was split down the middle effectively. One half was being controlled by the Soviet Union. The other half was very westernized and ultimately would join NATO and become an ally against the Soviet threat during the Cold War. And so at the time, Germany was a defeated nation. Nobody wanted them really armed, but they also realized that Germany was kind of like on that line, standing on that wall, if you will, to protect Europe from the Soviet threat. So they thought, well, when the Germans decided they wanted to buy a new rifle to replace some of their old bolt-action K98s, they thought, well, let's go ahead and let the border guard, the BGS, go ahead and adopt a few of these. And so the BGS did their own trials. They took the FAL, they did trials against it and the Spanish SETME, which would ultimately become the rifle we all know and love, the G3 or the HK91. But that's a different story. But they did test the Spanish SETME against the FAL, and the BGS decided, well, let's go with the FAL. And they found it to be the superior of the two rifles. And so they placed an order. The order was fulfilled, and those rifles would wind up being used by the border guards. Well, that would be early in the 1950s, like 1951, 1952. But 1956 or so, the German army was going to be reconstituted. And this, I think, ruffled even more feathers. Now you're not just talking about border guards trying to hold off that Soviet threat. Now you're talking about literally rearming the German army. The German army took a look at what the BGS had done, took a look at their testing. They realized by 1956, a number of nations were adopting the rifle. The U.S. was testing the rifle. The .308 cartridge was the new NATO standard, and they thought, well, this just makes sense. Let's place an order for it. Ultimately, the Belgians seemed to be okay with selling the rifles to Germany, but when Germany wanted to license the FAL and produce it domestically, that's when FN said, nope. So the Germans had to go with Plan B, and Plan B would be this rifle. Okay, so it was less than ideal for them, but ultimately the G3 would go on to be an outstanding service rifle. Now, I know you guys probably know that I make fun of the G3. I am a fan of the FAL. I am biased towards the FAL. I do think the FAL is the better of the two rifles, but that is not to say that the G3 is a bad rifle. It's not. It's an outstanding rifle, and I absolutely love it. But if I have to pick one or the other, I would go ahead and go with the FAL first. And the Germans would agree with me, at least in the 1950s. And so that's kind of a high-level overview of what happened with the Germans and the FAL, the few that they had ultimately to be given or sold off as military foreign aid, and they would go on with the Spanish SETME, which is kind of ironic. I mean, just a real brief history on that. The Germans developed the roller delay system during World War II, and then German engineers after the end of the war went to Spain, worked with SETME, came up with the SETME rifle, and it's just kind of ironic that the Germans' own technology was being sold back to them potentially by the Spanish, and then ultimately they did. They licensed it and started manufacturing it as the G3. So all that history aside, in the next segment, let's take a closer look at some of the features of the G1 because it has a couple of things that are a little bit different than a lot of the FALs that are currently out there. So since we're out here talking about the G1, let's quickly talk about the G3. This is a semi-automatic variant of the G3 rifle, otherwise known as the HK91 in the United States, but there are other importers like the SAR-8 and stuff like that that would come into the country. Now, this rifle uses World War II technology in that it makes extensive use of stampings and things like that. It does not have a last round bolt hold like the FAL does, at least the G1, and it's just, I don't know, it's not as refined. It's a great rifle, extremely reliable, easy to shoot. In terms of big bore battle rifles, it's relatively lightweight because of its stampings and use of polymers versus wood. So it really is a nice rifle. Now keep in mind the Setme would also have a wood stock and things like that, but this is kind of a later variation of the G3 rifle. The rifle is just a little bit more punchy. It doesn't have an adjustable gas system. This is a roller delay system. So the bolt and carrier velocity is higher on this than it would be on the FAL, and you can tune that on the FAL. Not so much on this, but with training, these are extremely easy rifles to shoot, just like the FAL, and they can be controlled with extensive training, even in fully automatic. But generally speaking, infantry rifles, they don't want you running them full auto, especially when you're shooting 308 out of 20-round magazines. It's kind of limiting. So loading this up is a little bit different than the FAL. Take your 20-round magazine, insert it in, locks in place. Again, does not have a last round bolt hold open, but you can pull this forward charging handle back and push it over into a locking recess, and that locks the bolt open for faster reloads. To charge it, do the HK slap. Selector lever is right there. And even though it's a little bit more punchy than FAL, it's still a very pleasant rifle to shoot. I love the G3. So the G1 would go through iterative changes, which is common, especially when the military, or in this case the border guards, the BGS, were when they were looking at adopting a new rifle. So there's an A, B, and C version of it, and ultimately, it'd be the C version I think that most people would know and recognize. Now, the features of this particular rifle start off with a metal butt plate with the trap door back here for a cleaning kit, and then in the 1950s, early 1950s, wood was still a thing. I mean, gosh, look what the U.S. military did. We went ahead and adopted the M14 instead of this. Big mistake in my opinion, but it also had wood stocks. So wood was still very commonly used. It would also use a wood pistol grip, but later, when these things would go in for service over time, they would be replaced with the standard black plastic FAL pistol grip that most of us know and love. And yeah. Then you would move forward. Now, this is not a perfect clone, if you will, of the German military C model, but you do have the lightning cuts along the receiver here. And this one has a wooden carrying handle, but you'll also find them with metal carrying handles that are ribbed. It has standard FAL fire controls. So this is a semi-automatic, but the third position would be down here. For fully automatic, you'll notice that the release lever for a takedown isn't on the lower half of the lower receiver, it's vertical. And that's how you break the weapon open for maintenance. The rear sight is incremented to 600 meters as the max distance, has a low profile rear sight on it. We have the non-folding charging handle over here on the side. Of course, it does not reciprocate. It is obviously cut for the carrying handle. And then early rifles, A models in particular, would have a wooden handguard. By the time the B and the C rolled around, the Germans had decided to replace that with the metal handguard. It looks very much like the STG-58 handguard. And then the Germans also were the first nation to request a bipod. This is kind of one of those things that people just kind of associate with the FAL, these really cool-looking bipods. But the Germans were the first ones to request it. And after they had done that, of course, then other nations would go ahead and adopt the bipod, which just clamps onto the barrel. The bipod has fixed legs. They don't adjust for length. They do have a detent that will keep them under spring pressure extended or folded, but you can't really, it has a little spike here, but if you really try to push into this bipod, it will collapse on you. So it's not an ideal bipod, but by 1950 standards, it was probably pretty decent. And also it'll pivot just a wee bit so you can, if you're on uneven ground. And then one of the more interesting features of the G1 is this removable muzzle device. So they had different types of muzzle devices. This is the standard, bird cage, closed bird cage type muzzle device. They had grenade launchers and blank firing attachments that all attached the same way. And basically, it's very reminiscent of something like what the Israelis did when they adopted the FAL, just with a bare barrel. That's kind of what this has. So you have this little flat spring right here that is locked onto the actual bayonet lug that's actually on the barrel. So I'm just going to lift up on this little flat spring. And when I do that, I'll be able to rotate the muzzle device. And when it hits a certain point, I can just slide that right off. And there's your muzzle device. Now again, blank firing attachments, grenade launchers, things like that. There are different versions of this that has a little wire on it that you don't have to use a tool to pry up the flat spring. You just pop over this wire and it'll give you the leverage you need to take it off. So there's different versions of it. But here's that bayonet lug I'm talking about, and that just rather, non-profiled barrel. Nothing special about it. I'm so used to seeing the FAL with the long flash hider like this. It's always weird to me to see the bare barrel, but there were countries, like I said, Israel, that would adopt it without any type of muzzle device whatsoever. To put it back on, you just slide it over and then twist, and it should just pop right back on to the bayonet lug, and it's fixed in place. Inside the rifle, just very quickly, it's standard FAL fare. You have your top cover. This thing's very tightly fit. And you have your bolt and carrier. Get the tools out of the way here. And that's one of the things I like about the FAL, is just the simplicity of it. It's so easy to take this rifle apart and service it. There's your bolt and your carrier. And then, of course, you can see down into the action of the gun and very easily clean it. Has a standard FAL adjustable gas system on it. The rear sight is adjustable for range. The front sight you adjust for elevation. The rear sight, you have two screws on either side, opposing screws, and you can do windage adjustments with the rear sight. The magazine release on these is pretty much standard fare. You have a little lever there, and it has a locking point in the front and clicks right in, and these are metric magazines. So those are pretty much the features and the ins and outs of the G1. Let's do some more shooting with the rifle. The G1's manual of arms is pretty much identical to every other FAL out there on the market. Now, a lot of the FALs will have different features, especially in military trim. Some will be semi-automatic, some will be fully automatic, some will have last round bolt hold opens, others will have it disabled. So there's little tiny differences between the rifles, and of course, there's cosmetic differences and all that good stuff. But when it comes down to the basic manual of arms, it is pretty much identical to every other FAL, again, out there. So that would be a good thing if you're a NATO country. If all of your allies are using the same cartridge and the same rifle, that means you have compatibility across the spectrum. And I think that's what Germany was going for when they wanted to adopt the G1. So to load this rifle up, it uses standard 20-round metric magazines. We have some Federal ball in here, 150 grain ball, American Eagle. We want to thank our friends at Federal for supplying this ammunition free of charge to the channel. It really does help out. So you rock and lock the magazine in, put the toe in first, and then you have a bolt release right over here that you just simply reach up with your thumb and drop it. The selector lever right there, so it's easily accessible from the shooter's thumb. And then, of course, it has the adjustable gas system out here. So whenever you get a new FAL, like if you go out and pick up a DS Arms rifle or something like that, more likely than not, you're going to have to fine-tune the gas system to the ammunition that you're using, because there's wild variations in .308 ammo that's out there. And so you can do that very easily with this adjustable gas system. There are wrenches out there, but usually new rifles don't have a whole lot of carbon buildup in them, and you can do it without a tool. All right, so let's do a little shooting with this bad boy. Extremely smooth shooting. Once you get that gas system dialed in, these things are just so smooth for .308s. I love the FAL. As far as big bore battle rifles go, I've said it a million times and I'll say it again, I love the FAL. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at the German G1 rifle from the Cold War era and a brief look at the G3. If you enjoy videos like this, if you like us talking about older military rifles and collectibles and stuff like that, let us know down in the comments. These are the types of videos I actually enjoy, but when a new product comes out, I also enjoy doing some of the review videos. But my passion for military rifles goes back in time, and I love everything from bolt actions to gas guns like this and everything in between. So let us know down in the comments if you want to see more videos like this. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, the best way to do that is to become part of our Patreon family. There's a link in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got the thanks and subscribe button underneath the video player you're watching right now. You can mash either one of those buttons and help support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Please swing by, check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 17 years of support. We'll talk to you guys soon.